live report from the Iowa Caucuses tonight on 11 Alive News.
Good evening, everyone. Senator Bob Dole, his headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa tonight, as he racks up an impressive victory in the Republican straw vote. Iowa caucuses, the first test of the 1988 presidential campaign, are underway.
Live from Des Moines, Iowa, NBC News reports the Iowa Caucuses. Decision 88, coverage of the Iowa Caucuses, sponsored in part by Merrill Lynch, an investment firm built on a tradition of trust, and by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Brokaw in Des Moines, and Iowa maintains its tradition of delivering surprises on caucus night. It can either be a launching pad or a trapdoor, and tonight it is a little of each for the candidates. For Senator Bob Dole, he has an impressive victory in Iowa tonight. Pat Robertson has an impressive second place showing, and the Vice President of the United States has a problem tonight. He is going to finish third, according to our projections, in the Republican straw vote. Here are the numbers, with almost all of the precincts now having checked in from across Iowa, and all night long, Senator Bob Dole has been at the top with about a 2-to-1 lead over the Vice President of the United States, George Bush, and squarely in the middle with an impressive second place showing tonight is Pat Robertson, the former television broadcaster, who has enormous grassroots strength that was not always measured in the pre-caucus polls. Tonight he has 25% of the vote, and he'll be able to parlay that in New Hampshire and down south. How effectively, we still do not know. The rest of the Republican field, a disappointing finish for Jack Kemp, who invested a lot of time and effort here, barely broke into double digits. Pete DuPont, 7% of the vote, and Al Haig barely registered because he barely appeared here. And then the rest of the Republican field, the others and uncommitted, rounding it all out. On the Democratic side, it is very close tonight. In Iowa, 3 men are bunched at the top. We have now almost 2/3 of the precincts that have checked in. As you can see, Missouri Congressman Richard Gephardt, who had a late surge in Iowa, is leading with 28% of that vote. Senator Paul Simon of Illinois, 24% of the vote that has been counted so far. Massachusetts Governor Mike Dukakis, 21% of the vote. I think that it's fair to say that if it stays right there, it is unlikely that any of the Democrats will come out. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, 11% of the vote. Bruce Babbitt, former governor of Arizona, who spent a lot of days here, almost a half a year altogether, only 9% of the vote. And Senator Gephardt, who got back into this race once again, saying, let the people decide. Well, they have. In Iowa, he has only 1% of the vote. Al Gore, Tennessee senator, chose not to campaign in Iowa. He wasn't doing well here, and he said it's not a representative state. And he picked up only 169 votes, so of the 60% that have been counted thus far. But the big story tonight at this hour is on the Republican side, where that showing of Pat Robertson presents some grave difficulties for Vice President George Bush, who is already in New Hampshire tonight, trying to establish a secondary line of defense, hoping that he can do better there than he did in Iowa. In fairness, Iowa was not a good state for him. This is a state that has been badly battered during the Reagan years, especially in economic terms. Also, Pat Robertson spent a lot of money here in very sophisticated newspaper and broadcasting advertisements. He also had a lot of strength here organizationally, and he turned them out to his credit tonight. A few moments ago, I had a chance to talk with Pat Robertson about his showing. Mr. Robertson, congratulations.
Thank you, Tom. I'm overjoyed at this expression of love and support from the people here in Iowa.
It is impressive beating the Vice President of the United States tonight, but after all, you got only 25% roughly of the Iowa Republican caucus scores. That's only a fraction of the Republicans in the state. It's not really broadly based. Do you think that you'll have more trouble as you move on to places like New Hampshire?
Not a bit in the world. I think I was looking for an opportunity to broaden my base, and that's exactly what happened.
When you were a television evangelist, you often said that you had God's advice on specific decisions that you had to make. Do you get his advice as well on specific political decisions?
I'd like to point out to you, if you don't mind, I think it's the last time that I want to be called a television evangelist. I've been a TV broadcaster. I run the 5th largest cable network in America, and I'm on 37 million households with cable, which rivals a lot of the so-called big boys. And because I am a religious broadcaster and have talked to people on major issues, that's why they have given me this tremendous victory in Iowa. And I really believe that henceforth the religious bigotry that question of yours implies is going to be a dead issue. I don't like it, and I think out of Iowa they're saying you're a serious candidate, and I'm going to run as a serious candidate.
With all due respect, Mr. Robertson, there was no religious bigotry expressed at all.
Well,
I'll accept your language. You're a religious broadcaster. I'll accept that. Mary and Pat Robertson, who did very well in Iowa tonight, finishing in second place. The man who finished number one is Senator Bob Dole of Kansas. He's with us now from his headquarters here in Des Moines. Senator Dole, congratulations, a 2-1 lead over Vice President Bush.
I don't hear anything.
Do you hear me now? This is Tom Brokaw, Senator Dole.
No, you didn't have it turned on.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, fine. Well, you're doing fine here in Iowa tonight, Senator Dole. You have a very impressive victory, 38% of the vote. Are you surprised, however, and a little concerned about the strong showing of Pat Robertson?
Well, I'm probably more surprised about the vice president showing, but I think what Pat Robertson is doing, he's telling us that in caucus states, he can be a real threat. I think in an open primary, it's not that great. He's also telling us to put up the welcome sign. There are a lot of people out there who want to be Republicans, and I say, come on in. But we feel good about our position. We think that talking about the issues paid off, and we're happy about it.
Senator Dole, you now move on to New Hampshire, where Vice President Bush is said to be extremely well organized. It is a state where you won't have what many people perceive to be the regional advantage that you had in Iowa. Give us your projection now about what happens in New Hampshire as you go head-to-head against Vice President Bush and now Pat Robertson, who's much more formidable.
It's going to be a tough race. We're behind. The recent polls, the one tonight said we were 7 behind. I think it's probably more than that. I do hope we'll help a little. In our win here, it's an impressive victory. We had a lot of good help. The people of Iowa really listened carefully. They made their choice. We hope that we can give the same message to the voters of New Hampshire and that we may have the same result there. But let's face it, I'm behind. I'm not the front runner in New Hampshire.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Bob Dole. We'll see you next week in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire already tonight, the Vice President of the United States, George Bush, and with him is NBC News correspondent Bob Kerr. Bob, the Vice President has already held a news conference. What did he have to say about the remarkable showing of Pat Robertson?
Tom, he said pretty much what Senator Dole just said. He said Iowa is a state that lends itself to a Robertson type of candidacy and victory, much more so than New Hampshire or any other state. Bush said he was very disappointed. He did not expect to come in third, and he hopes to do a lot better here. Well, I was going to say to you that the fact is his aides, Bush's aides, were well aware of the surge yesterday and today by Robertson, and they were hoping that Robertson would catch up with Dole so that the pain of this evening could be shared. And there clearly was pain when Bush was here earlier this evening speaking. He expected defeat. He was trying to avoid embarrassment, and he even got possibly humiliation here.
Is there any indication from the Bush camp that they'll now begin to play very hard ball with Pat Robertson?
Well, there is no indication that they're going to take off after Robertson. I think what I have picked up from some of the Bush aides I've spoken with here, even the fight between Bush and Dole may have been costing Bush some. One aide told me that he didn't like it when it appeared as though the vice president stepped down in the gutter, even though it may not have been his actions to get involved in the fight that he got into with Bob Dole last week. There have to be two worries here, though, for the Bush campaign tonight, though, Tom. One is that this tremendous organizational advantage and money advantage in New Hampshire and elsewhere could be destabilized by the sheer momentum of what Robertson and Dole did tonight. So George Bush, who had the big no, as he claimed in 1980, seems to have slow no or no no here tonight, Tom.
Thank you very much. We'll end on that note from New Hampshire with you tonight, Bob Kerr. We'll be back with the Democratic side of the story in a moment, but first, one Iowa politician said tonight that Robertson's showing indicates that he can stir the masses. No one ever shouts amen at George Bush or Bob Dole. Back in a moment. We're back in Des Moines, Iowa, where we have a very tight race on the Democratic side tonight. In fact, there's no clear indication at this hour just who may win, although Richard Gephardt has been leading most of the night as we have counted the vote. 64% of the precincts now have been counted, and as you can see, Richard Gephardt, congressman from Missouri, who spent more days in the state than any of the candidates, has 28% of that vote. Senator Paul Simon, who is another neighbor of Iowa, from the neighboring state of Illinois, 24% of the vote. Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts with 21% of the vote. How does that translate into delegates? Well, not automatically, it turns out, because you have to do well in each of the precincts, not just in the statewide vote. In each of the precincts, you have to have at least 15% of the vote assembled there. And here's how we show the delegates showing up tonight, and that will be ultimately important when they get to Atlanta for the Democratic National Convention. Gephardt, we indicate, will have 23 delegates before this night is out. Senator Paul Simon of Illinois, 17. Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts, 14. Jesse Jackson, who has been getting a pretty good popular vote tonight, could end up with 2 delegates out of Iowa, 58 to be chosen altogether. And then Bruce Babbitt, former governor of Arizona, none. Al Gore, who quit campaigning here, same situation. Senator Gary Hart, who had such an impressive showing here 4 years ago, almost no votes and no delegates tonight. At least 2 of them will be uncommitted, according to the projection that we have so far. The man who's been leading the Democrats all night long is with me now, and that is Richard Gephardt, Democrat of Missouri. A good showing for you, but if those other 2 stay as close to you as they now are, it looks like it's going to be pretty much a dead heat going into New Hampshire.
It's hard to tell how it'll exactly turn out, but I think at the end of the evening we're going to have a good victory. And I think it means the people here in Iowa have really been listening to my message of a new economic policy for our country, a new trade policy, new agriculture policy, and I think people are worried about wages and jobs, and that's really the message.
Congressman, you spent a lot of time in this state, almost a half a year. You spent a lot of money. You're from nearby Missouri. Now you're going to a New England state, and then you have to move rapidly down south where you weren't able to spend that kind of time. Do you think what you were able to do here will translate as effectively there?
I think so, Tom, and the reason I think that is that what I see everywhere in America is the same thing. People are worried about regaining control of our economic destiny. They're worried about jobs and wages, and even though the unemployment rate is low in some places, I think people are really concerned about where we're headed. So I think exactly what I've been saying here will apply throughout the entire country.
But now they're going to concentrate on your record. You've been in Washington a man who has been a man of the establishment. Here, campaigning as the outsider. You've changed your mind on abortion over the years. You've changed your mind on ERA over the years. You're going to be accused of being the candidate of the flip-flop. You know that that's coming. That's part of the price of popularity coming out of Iowa.
I've been in public life for 15 years, and I think that I've changed and grown when it's right and appropriate to do that. I decide on the facts and on the circumstances of a particular issue. And just as you're a better news broadcaster now than you were 10 years ago, I think I'm a better representative, and I think I'll be a good president.
Well, at least people voted on you. The vote's still out on me. Thank you very much, Congressman, for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. Dick Gephardt of Missouri, who is leading the Democratic field tonight, but still too close to call. Right behind him is Senator Paul Simon, Democrat from Illinois, and he's with us at this hour. Senator Simon, there were lots of talk about a late surge for you, that you may finish number 1 here. You spent a lot of time in Iowa, of course. You got the endorsement of the Des Moines Register. How do you assess your standing here tonight?
Well, if the present trends continue, Dick will carry by a small margin here. What I think is clear is that the basic message that we have to have a government that cares once again, that fights for the less fortunate, that builds a safer world, that message is really catching on. And I moved from the initial Des Moines Register poll of 1% now to at least a very strong second, and I think it's clear that going into New Hampshire, we're going to have at least 2 strong candidates contesting for the Democratic nomination there.
But, Senator, as you know, a lot of people believe that your message that you just repeated for us here tonight is tailor-made for a state like Iowa, which is more liberal. It is close to Illinois, which is your home state. You have invoked the images of Hubert Humphrey and Harry Truman and Adlai Stevenson, and a lot of people believe that that plays much better here than it will in New Hampshire, and especially better than it will down south, where there is a much more conservative Democratic Party.
Well, it's very interesting. I've been using that same message everywhere. I haven't tailored it just to Iowa. And I would add Iowa is this idea that Iowa is such a liberal state. In fact, Iowa in 1976 gave the moderate Jimmy Carter the votes he needed. 1980, between Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy, Jimmy Carter got it. 1984, you know, you could just go on.
I think it is fairly clear that Iowa really is in the mainstream, and the message that I've been bringing is in the mainstream of the party. And I think that's going to be borne out in New Hampshire and the states after that.
Thank you very much, Senator Paul Simon.
Thank you, Tom.
Running an impressive second tonight on the Democratic side. NBC News commentator John Chancellor is with us now. He's been sitting over in the corner watching all of the numbers, taking an assessment of what's going on tonight. How do you size up the Democrats at this point in time?
Well, I think Iowa did its job, Tom. I think we have now some definition in this race, which we didn't have before. And what we have going into New Hampshire, it seems to me, is a populist. We just had him here, Gephardt. You have a centrist in Governor Dukakis of Massachusetts, and we just saw an old-fashioned liberal who says he's in the mainstream, Paul Simon from Illinois. Now, Gephardt was helped here very much because he spoke about agriculture with more authority than almost any of the other candidates, and this is a farm state. I think that was terribly important. Going into New Hampshire, he may have to slightly craft a different message. Dukakis, third place, far from home, is no disgrace for him. I think he's in rather good shape. He has a huge lead in New Hampshire going up there a week from today. He ought to do very well. And Simon's second place in Iowa keeps him alive.
The Thank you very much, John Chancellor. Jesse Jackson did well tonight in the popular vote, of course. Gary Hart and Bruce Babbitt did not do so well, and as one of the observers here said, that tonight's losers tomorrow will have to stand nude, upside down in the public square to get any attention. Well, we'll see. We'll be back with more from Iowa right after this. Iowa is a kind of a sorting out place. Earlier this week, there were a group of people who were running around Iowa with Nixon masks on and T-shirts that said, "He's tanned, he's ready, Richard Nixon in '88. Well, it probably won't be necessary for Richard Nixon to run again because we now have some definition. We want to show you what's going on with the Democrats, first of all. Here's how they stack up tonight. In Iowa, a very close race at the top in Iowa. Richard Gephardt, Paul Simon, and Michael Dukakis, closely bunched. 65% of the precincts have checked in. Thus far, it is still too close for us to make a projection on who will win Iowa, although Gephardt has been holding his own all night long. And for the three of them, it's probably strong enough as a finish to get them on to New Hampshire. On the Republican side, of course, what has happened tonight has been a big surprise for Vice President George Bush. He's finishing third. Bob Dole with an impressive win. Pat Robertson with an even more impressive second place. George Bush, already in New Hampshire, trying to short-circuit whatever momentum Dole and Robertson will have coming out of Iowa. My colleague, Connie Chung, is standing by right now. She's been taking a look at the NBC News poll and what it shows us about how Iowans voted tonight and why. Connie?
Thank you, Tom. Our analysis is based on actual votes at the caucuses. It's not based on exit polling. The story of the night, what went wrong for George Bush? In cities where he should have done well, his support was flat, with only 21% of the vote. In small towns, his strength in 1980, he's weak, 19%. And in the sparsely populated countryside, considered dull territory, Bush lived up to his expectations, which were very low, 18%. Now, Pat Robertson's invisible army was anything but. He has 25% of votes in the West, a real strength. He also is strong in southeastern counties, known to be pro-life, 27%, and he has stolen from Bush the supporters he had in 1980, from small towns to Davenport, 30%. Bob Dole, the Republican from neighboring Kansas, worked that advantage and succeeded in using his campaign theme, "He's one of us." Dole was strong tonight across the board, strong in cities, 35%, strong in small towns, 36%, and in rural areas, a very impressive 40%. Throughout the campaign, Dole said that he grew up getting his hands dirty in topsoil, and farmers apparently warmed to that. Tom?
Thank you very much, Connie Chung. Robert Frost once had a wonderful line, by the way, about the Iowa topsoil. He said, "It looks good enough to eat without running vegetables through it." And I think that that's probably true. John Chancellor is with me now. John, the Republican side is really quite remarkable, the Pat Robertson showing tonight.
It sure is.
None of those, well, not all of those people showed up, obviously, in the pre-caucus polls, but he knew what he was doing. He knew how to get them organized, how to get them aroused, and how to get them to the right caucus site. And he also knew which issues touched him most deeply. So he is really a bit unknown going into New Hampshire.
Well, those are secular issues, Tom. I mean, he talks about family values. He talks about a lot of very conservative things. And when I've been with him, he made an effort to keep it away from the religious side. But the amazing thing to me was the Des Moines Register poll showed him at 13%. Tonight he's at 24%. There's no clearer example of the invisible army. They did not talk to pollsters. And that's going to give people in other campaigns, Dole, Bush, fits as we continue through this primary season. They're out there, but they aren't talking.
Well, the fact of the matter is he does know how to organize things. He had a very impressive religious broadcasting network that he organized over the years. He raised a lot of money through that. And in every test that he's come up against so far of straw votes, whether they're in Michigan or here in Iowa or what happened in Hawaii last week, as Ken Bodie pointed out earlier tonight, he's been able to deliver to people. So I would think that the Vice President of the United States, even though he's well organized in New Hampshire, must be a little unsettled tonight.
Well, I think that is very true, and I think we have to remind ourselves that Iowa is liberal. The Republicans here are more liberal than they are around the country, and Pat Robertson won. He came in that well, second, with this liberal electorate.
Thank you very much, John Chancellor. Now, Governor Dukakis is standing by as well tonight. He's holding in third place. He had hoped that he might finish second, but the guess probably will be tomorrow that he did well enough here in Iowa to move on to New Hampshire, which, after all, is his neighboring state. He had to run against two regional candidates, Senator Paul Simon of Illinois and Congressman Richard Gephardt of Missouri. But what it indicates, it seems to me, Governor Dukakis, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in a real dead heat now as you go into New Hampshire with your friends Simon and Gephardt.
Well, I feel very good about it, Tom. You know, 10 months ago, nobody in Iowa knew what a Dukakis was, let alone who I was. And here I am, a sitting and active governor out here campaigning against a couple of next-door neighbors, and we're in the thick of this fight. I think it shows that this is a national candidacy, and if we can go for the gold, as I hope we can in New Hampshire next week, I think we're going to be on our way.
And what happens after New Hampshire if you don't win a very impressive showing there? Don't you think that a lot of people will begin to say, look, Mike Dukakis doesn't have the strength that we thought that he had if he can't win very, very big in his own backyard?
Well, look, Dick and Paul barely squeaked by here, so, you know, I suppose those are things that you're all going to have to measure, but nobody's ever carried New Hampshire by more than 10 percentage points in a Democratic primary. I'm just going to go out there and work hard. I've gotten a wonderful response from the people of New Hampshire and New England, but I'm particularly pleased, Tom, at what's happened here because the people of Iowa have been just so warm and so responsive and so supportive. And if we can win in New Hampshire and then go on through Minnesota, South Dakota, and the New England states into Super Tuesday, we're going to have ourselves a very good campaign and, I think, a winning campaign.
Thank you very much. Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis tonight. We'll be back with more right after this.
Decision 88, coverage of the Iowa Caucuses, sponsored in part by Kellogg's Corn Flakes. What more could you want from a cereal? And by Merrill Lynch, an investment firm built on a tradition of trust.
I'm here with the NBC News correspondents that you'll be seeing a lot of during this campaign year, Lisa Myers, Dennis Murphy, Chris Wallace, and Ken Bodie. Bodie, let's begin with you. Is this an impressive showing tonight by Pat Robertson in Iowa, a one-state showing? Can he carry this to New Hampshire in your judgment?
Every time Robertson has said he's had the numbers on the Republican side, he has had the numbers. People doubted it. I don't know whether he can carry it to New Hampshire, but it's not over for Robertson. He drew a lot of Democrats tonight. A lot of states in the South where Democrats can vote for Robertson. Look for him to be really strong there.
Lisa Myers, what does Vice President Bush do now about Robertson?
Bush isn't going to worry about Robertson. He's going to worry about Bob Dole. This is the ultimate test of his strategy, which is a fortress strategy. You stop whoever wins out of Iowa, and you stop him in New Hampshire. He's got 8 days.
We've been hearing you talk a lot about a two-man raft here in Iowa last week or so, Dennis. It looks like 3 people fit on that raft tonight after all.
Well, it looks like somebody's pushing behind, doesn't it?
The Democratic side, at least.
Yeah, I think what you're going to have is Gephardt is going to arrive, and there's going to be some white heat there. I think there's going to be more questions for Gephardt than there's going to be for Simon when he arrives in New Hampshire. There's a lot of unanswered stuff here about the way he ran the campaign, the business of the flip-flop votes that Simon tried to stick on him. So I think there's going to be more questions for Gephardt when they hit the ground in New Hampshire than for Simon. We'll see.
Chris Wallace, a lot of people think tonight that maybe this is good news for Mike Dukakis because he finished third in Iowa, but the big play coming out of this state will be Robertson, Dole, and Bush, and he can go up into New Hampshire where he's well organized and consolidate his strength there without everyone looking in as closely as they may have in the past.
He didn't get a big victory here, and there had been some thought if he could win in both Iowa and New Hampshire, he could wrap up the Democratic nomination. On the other hand, he sneaks into the 20s. He's got 21%. He's in the same double digits with all the others. And I think you're right. The key attention tomorrow is going to be on the Republican side. The caucus remains the favorite son and the big winner, the big leader in New Hampshire.
Thank you all very much. It looks like a lot of people were winnowed in and not winnowed out tonight in Iowa. We'll see you next week in New Hampshire. I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News.
Thank you.